When I was a child, I was walking along through a large crowd of people with my father. And after walking along and chatting for a while, I looked up at the man that was beside me. I was holding his hand, and I had assumed I'd been walking along beside my father. And I remember even to this day the chill of terror that went up my spine as I saw that the man that I was walking with wasn't him. That somewhere along the line I had left my father's side and absent-mindedly been walking along the side of another man. Well, I thank God that I found my father after that. But that thought has never left me. There are many in this world today who are walking along beside some religious belief, some power, some philosophy that they believe they can depend upon. But sometime in the future, when their eyes are opened, they're going to see that they have been deceived. You see, at the end of time, there'll only be two groups of people. Those who have held the hand and walked along in the faith of the true God, and those who have been deceived by the great counterfeiter. If you look with me in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, you'll see exactly what I mean. Beginning in verse 12, the Apostle Paul is talking to the church at Corinth. He says, "But what I do, that I will do, that I may cut off the occasion from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory they may be found even as we." There were men that were entering the church claiming to be religious leaders, teachers of theology, and guides in the name of God. And Paul wanted to cut off the opportunity for these false teachers. He says in verse 13, "For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." Now, the word light in the Bible means truth. Here towards the end of time, Satan will be such an angel of truth that millions and millions will be following him, thinking that he's the true God. "Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers," friends, ministers of the gospel, ministers of truth, "also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works." The frightful impact of waking up when it's too late and finding that you've been following the wrong God is going to happen to millions of people. In Revelation 16, beginning in verse 13 and verse 14, we see the impact that the movement of following Lucifer ignorantly is going to have upon our world. That's Revelation chapter 16, verse 13 and 14. "I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs, coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet." 3 great powers united in this world at the end of time, all the powers of the world. And through those powers there will be something that John saw as spirits like frogs, and it's defined in the next verse. "For they are the spirits of devils, going forth to the kings of the earth," or the rulers of the world, "and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty." Today we're in the midst of this very occult or spiritualistic or Luciferian explosion that's taking the entire world in its sway. And friends, the fact that it represents here the powers that will be influenced by these spirits as the religious institutions and secular institutions means it doesn't make any difference if you claim to be a Christian. Unless you're following the narrow line of truth, the God or the one who you call Christ in the near future could be Satan himself as an angel of light. And it behooves each one of us to understand this thing. Now in the book of Revelation, we get the first views of the conflict brought out in Revelation chapter 12 in a vision by John on the island of Patmos in the Aegean Sea. John, assuming that his work for the Lord was over with, was an exile to that island during a period of persecution. While there, God came to him in a number of wonderful visions, and those visions were to guide and protect the church until the end of time and the coming of Christ. The one vision that covers really the longest period of time is in the heart of Revelation. It's Revelation 12. And in that vision, John sees an event that took place in heaven before the creation of this world. And we read, there was war in heaven. Michael, or the one who is godlike, and of course we know that Jesus is the express image of God, so it must be Christ that's being talked about here. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. If you look at this picture of a dragon falling from heaven, it's highly symbolic, but it represents something very significant. A dragon is made up of all the destroying elements of the most dangerous animals, with the result that the dragon is a symbol of the destroyer. The real truth of the matter is this being called Satan, the devil, was originally one of the most beautiful beings in the universe. He was created to be the covering cherub, and we can read about that in Isaiah chapter 14. It gives us an amazing description of what Satan was like, or the adversary was like, before the fall. Beginning in verse 12, we read this. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer? The word Ferris means to carry, and the word Luz means light. So Lucifer was the bearer of the light, or the glory of God. O Lucifer, son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. I will sit also in the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the cloud. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to the sides of the pit. The description of the fall and the eventual result of Lucifer and those that follow him are given in the Word of God. And in Ezekiel, it explains even further what he looked like and the results of what will take place to those who follow him. That's in Ezekiel chapter 28. And we'll begin reading in verse 13. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering, the sardius, topaz, and diamond. And it goes on to describe some of the most beautiful jewels. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth. That means that he hovered above the throne of God, probably spreading those glorious wings out, his body covered with the most gorgeous stones. And as the light, or the luz from the glory of God, spread up through him, and he bore that, he reflected magnificent colors in all direction, one of the most glorious scenes that the angels could have beheld. And I have set thee so, thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitudes of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries by the multitudes of thy iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore will I bring fire forth from the midst of thee. It shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all them that behold thee. Satan and those that follow him, even if they sincerely are deceived, friends, are going to end up burned to ashes on the surface of this earth. Look with me in the book of Malachi, in the last chapter, chapter 4. And there's a description of what will happen at the end of this world's history. For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. And ye shall go forth and grow up as calves in the stall, and ye shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I shall do this, saith the Lord. There is no future in following Lucifer. Today, and I say that, if I was just talking to Christians, they would say, well, of course I believe that. Why are you presenting this? Because today, Lucifer is a beloved leader among the largest group of religious believers in the world. The worship of Lucifer is witchcraft. And that's the fastest growing movement in the world today. There are many today that are holding the hands of another god who are going to wake up in terror one day. Now you remember the story of Lucifer in the Bible, how he fell from heaven. God announced that he was now the adversary, that's the word Satan. And coming into the Garden of Eden, he took the form of a serpent, or a dragon, a winged serpent. And there, through that medium, he deceived Eve into eating the fruit of the tree, bringing about the woe and misery into the world of man. But the one thing that's interesting about that is what the serpent said. It said that ye shall not surely die. The teaching of the immortality of the soul has transcended every religious institution. There is very, very few in this world today that believes that when you die, you go to sleep. But this is the number one doctrine that is being used by Satan today to deceive the world. If you would turn with me to the book of Psalms. That'll be Psalms chapter 115. We'll read about what happens to a man when he dies. Verse 17, the dead praise not the Lord, neither any that go down into silence. You remember the words of Christ when he said Lazarus was asleep? He finally said Lazarus was dead. Take the time to study out the subject of the dead in the Bible. It's the one subject that Satan does not want the Christian world to understand. And what's happening to our world today, I just want to show you a few things in the time that we have here. The first thing I want to show you is from a book written by a Protestant Christian called Unholy Spirits. In this book, he makes an amazing observation of history. He says this: occultism surfaces as a cultural phenomenon at the end of civilization. And we're experiencing the greatest occult revolution that the world has ever seen in recorded history. He said the consistent occultism of the late Roman Empire overwhelmed the rational, confident aspects of older classical civilization and weakened it sufficiently so that only the Christian had sufficient authority and self-confidence to take over and rebuild its faltering institution. Occultism came at the end of the medieval world, not during it, contrary to popular opinion. It has now come at the end of the enlightenment of humanism, at the end of civilization. The evidence that we have to share you that our world around us, and especially the United States, is saturated with the worship of Lucifer, is an indication that we have come to an end of civilization and to an end of the history of the world. I'll give you one example, and not necessarily from someone who's a Christian who's just looking at these things, trying to find little things to prove his point. But this book, called The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall, one of the leading authors, writers, and historians in the area of occult theology, witchcraft, and masonry. He makes a statement that is quoted by Dave Hunt in the book The Seduction of Christianity, and I'd like to read that to you. He says here, There is abundant evidence that in many forms of modern thought, especially the so-called prosperity psychology, willpower building, metaphysics, and systems of high-pressure salesmanship, that black magic has merely passed through a metamorphosis, and although its name may be changed, its nature remains the same. Modern thought today, modern psychology, human potential, the imagery, and all of these seminars that are going on mind sciences are a revival of theurgy, which was the art of controlling the world around you by your own imagination. It was called black magic, and it's taking the world today. These things should shock us and amaze us, and we should begin to research and study out where we're at individually in our relationship to the world to see if we're being deceived by these things. If you look at the slide, you see a picture of Lucifer. So beautiful and so loved by the angels that they actually believed that when he said that he should become a god, they believed that he should. That he should have that opportunity. And when he tried to take the throne of God by force, a third of the angels entered in with him. These beings of tremendous intelligence, with tremendous minds, were able to be deceived by him. What chance do we have if we don't draw close to God? Now, the image of the serpent was used in Eden, and we can see that it has been used in every major pagan culture throughout the world ever since. Look at this quotation from a Mason, one of the leading Masons, a man by the name of Pearson. It says that all the mysteries throughout the world were the same in substance, being derived from one source and celebrated in honor of the same deities, though acknowledged under different appellations, is further evidenced from the fact that they are traced to the plains of Shinar before the dispersion of mankind. As we go to the plains of Shinar, we find that the head god of the pantheon of Babylonian deities, the head demon, the word demon meant the spirit of the dead. It didn't mean a fallen angel in the original terminology. It meant worshiping the dead. The head demon was Enlil, the lord of demons, the serpent god that waits in the path to destroy mankind. You see, the Babylonians did not believe you have to worship a good god, but you must worship the destroyer to placate him. The entire system of Luciferian worship, the Luciferian Conspiracy, originated around a fear religion, a fear of death. In the Babylonian text, the 7 planets are compared to an enormous serpent with 7 heads, 7 serpents rising out of the sea. No accident here. The serpent can only be traced back to Eden. These 7 gods were said to be the messengers of Enlil, the lord of demons, or Nergal, the king of Hades, the weapon by which the evil one brought misfortune and disaster and death upon mankind. They worshiped the devil in the form of a serpent. The Greeks pictured Hydra with 7 heads. In Chinese myths, each head of Hydra was said to rule over 7 planets. Giant 7-headed serpents are found in temples in Indochina, and the sun god Buddha is sometimes pictured with 7 heads, or seated on the 7-headed serpent. The Yazidis of Mesopotamia worship Shaitan, the devil, and claim that he had 7 forms. In India, Juggernaut is sometimes pictured as a 7-headed dragon. Krishna and other Hindu deities are all pictured seated on or canopied by 7-headed serpents. And in India, this day, Shiva is worshipped as a 7-headed serpent himself. The Romans had a building called the Septizonium and the 7 zones. A common title for Rome was Septimonium, or the 7 mountains. The whole concept of the 7-headed dragon, the serpent that rules over everything, can be seen saturating the cultures of this world. The Maya god Ahuachapat, which is translated serpent with 7 heads, was similar to Chikmoto. The Indians of Southern California worshipped a 7-headed serpent. The Pima Indians worshipped a seven-headed serpent. You can go down to Mississippi area and find along the Mississippi River a great 300-foot serpent with the symbol of the cobra and great mounds in the ground and a convolution of 7 convolutions. It was the universal worship of the serpent all the way down through the centuries. I've been to Oslo and walked under the arch of one of those Scandinavian churches of the Vikings, and the entire arch is made up of the carvings of a writhing serpent with wings. And I've seen the Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan of the Mexicans and the Mayans and the Peruvians. And I've been to Egypt, and there, as you go into Hatshepsut's temple tomb, you'll find 2 great serpents on either side with wings, and their bodies convolute all the way up to the inner sanctuary. And you can go to Chichen Itza today, and there you can see the temple with the serpents going all the way up to the temple up above, which represents heaven. Everywhere you go, especially Egypt, where the serpent represents the soul, and the serpent represents the deities of heaven, everything is represented by that serpent. It's the most amazing thing, that this entire world is saturated with the belief in the ancient serpent god. Lucifer, that old devil, the serpent, the dragon, knows that the best way that he can destroy mankind is over the issue of death. He lied to man in Eden that he could live forever, and now men look at death with the hope of life afterwards. Now every one of us is going to face that grave someday. All the way through the centuries, when men lost contact with their loved ones, the wail of suffering has gone up. This is the greatest motivation in the heart of man. And then when each one of us look in the mirror and we see the wrinkles forming and we see the gray hairs forming, we know that we're dying while we're alive. Our bodies are dying. Every one of us face the grave. All the way through the centuries then, leaders, intelligent men, researchers have tried to delve into the mysteries beyond the grave and understand something of what happens there. They've tried to make contact with spirits beyond the grave, anything to find out where they could get a hold of the power. And so when you go into ancient pagan cult worship that revolves around the sun god, it all revolves around the worship of this life-giving energy that somehow man would somehow have the ability to contact God and get this power. The picture on the screen right now is the Egyptian god of the dead, Serapis. And notice that although he's the god of the dead, and these people used to eat little white circular cakes that were dedicated to this god in the belief that somehow they could get that god's power inside of them to give them more life. Look at the top of his head. He has a hat, and on it is a little branch that's budding. So the god of the dead, the destroyer, the one who's in charge of the grave, is also worshipped in the pagan world as the life giver. The whole concept of makeup was the idea that the spirits of the dead would come back to a priest, a shaman, or a witch doctor. And the witch doctor would direct the people to paint themselves up to look like this spirit in order to pay homage to it, to gain power from it. Now this picture here, a symbol of a copy of some of the ornaments that were used in Babylon, indicates the idea that these people would make three-dimensional images of the gods of the heavens in order to placate them or gain their power in sympathetic magic for the purpose of life, for the purpose of escaping suffering and sickness. Now, if you look at this picture here, this is offering the children to the god Moloch in the land of Canaan. Here, this image the hands would be heated up red hot, and they would lay the living babies on it, and they would play loud music to hide the screams so the parents wouldn't feel as bad. But the thing was, they were hoping that the energy released at the death of this baby would release forces that would guarantee fertility and guarantee blessings from God. So this dragon god is a symbol of the devil, who in every age has been looked to as the life giver, the serpent god. In the Roman Church, they have duplicated the universal idea of receiving life through eating the wafer. That wafer is in the shape of the sun god, the symbol of the life-giving power of the serpent god. Because the Roman Church grew to such tremendous power during the Middle Ages, so much of the research had to be done in the mysteries by the secret societies. In some of the old castles, men who worshiped the ancient Kabbalic rites of the Jews worshiped them secretly for fear of persecution, and other men that delved into other areas of witchcraft and communication with the dead had to do it secretly or they would be persecuted. For at that time, the Roman Church taught that communication with the dead was her area alone, and even to this day she believes that instantaneous contact with the dead is to be in the veil of the Roman Church. So the real history of the occult during the centuries of the Middle Ages can be found primarily and only in the secret societies. Some of these societies would kiss a symbol of a goat god or the devil and would be initiated into the belief of the immortality of the soul and contact with the dead. Terrible oaths were accepted to keep the people from revealing what they were learning in these secret societies. In Masonry, which today is one of the most prominent of these secret societies, they utilize the Bible and make it appear to the initiate that this is a Christian religion or a Jewish religion. But when one gets into it, take for instance the teaching that it originated in Solomon's temple. They find out very soon that what the Masons are referring to here is that this temple is the temple of soul man, or the sun god, the life giver. The worship is the same as that of ancient Babylon. On the wall you see this five-pointed star. It's an indication from their own writings that they take their initiation before a symbol of Satan. The symbols here on these Masonic staffs show that they worship the sun, the moon, and the stars. No matter where you're initiated, whether up the right side of these stairs or the left side, whether you come from the Jews, the Arabic line of Masonry, or whether you come from the Protestant line, no matter what, you'll be initiated into the mysteries of nature. When these people in the secret societies, whether Rosicrucian, whether Masonic, whether Jewish Kabbalistic rites, when they say our Father, that God is not the true God. They're holding the hand of a false God, and their Father is not the Father in the Bible, but it is that old dragon, the serpent, and Satan. We've briefly mentioned the fall of Lucifer, his use of the lie that man will live after death to create in man a craving to understand what happens after the grave, and through that deceptive medium to set himself up as the God of this world. We saw the rise of false Christianity and her connection with the life after death. And then we watched the rise of the secret societies who continued the experimentation into the occult and witchcraft and the world of the dead. But how is it that the occult and witchcraft is so prominent in our world today? We have to go back to the middle of the 19th century. There in a small house in Hydesville, New York, the Fox sisters, which we have a picture of on the screen, heard a rapping in the wall. And then they called out the name of Mr. Splitfoot and asked him to copy the number of fingers that one of the girls raised. Quickly, 3 raps came from the wall, and communication with supposedly the dead began. Within a short time, there were over 1,200 mediums in New York. And then before the end of the year, the movement of spiritualism, or contact with the dead, took place all over the globe on every major continent. It was the moving of Lucifer towards his final deception to take the human race into deception. In this next slide, ancient wisdom revived is a term that is applied to the teaching of Theosophy, a revival of the ancient occult again just after the movement of the Fox sisters began. In Vermont, a couple of men by the name of the Eddy brothers were carrying on tremendous seances where on stage they would go into a trance and demonic spirits would manifest, appearing to be people who once lived in the past. Some of the wealthiest in society came to see the Eddy brothers' performances. On this next slide is a man by the name of Alcott. He was a lawyer and very interested in proving that the phenomenon of spiritualism, or contact with the dead, was wrong. So he went to the home of the Eddy brothers, he observed the phenomenon, and then he tried to find out where the trap doors were. He crawled under the house, knocked on the walls. He discovered that there was something real happening there, and the rest of his life was dedicated to the subject of spiritualism. While he was there, he met a Russian seer or psychic by the name of Helena Blavatsky. She had once been a Christian and left it and went into the worship of the occult. She studied in Egypt and in India, and now she was there helping the Eddy brothers. Together, these two went back to England and they started what was called the Theosophy Society. In the 1870s, she believed that beings from the spirit world that she called the secret masters were giving her a body of knowledge that was to be revealed to the world. A union not only of occult history through the centuries, which would include every major religion, but a union of spiritualism now and science and philosophies to reach the great minds of the world. This accumulation of data that came from the spirit world was called Isis Unveiled, and laid a foundation for a whole new age of spiritualism, but now acceptable to the upper classes. The lady that you see on the picture now is a lady by the name of Mary Besant, who joined that organization and brought with it her interest in social reform. It was here that we see the seed of the passive social movements that have affected our world today. Everything from women's liberation to civil rights had its birth in the work that she did in India in raising up the Indian people to overthrow their British overlords who were Christians. At this same time, a continuous, slow-moving but powerful international conspiracy was developing. It had begun in the middle of the 18th century with a man by the name of Adam Weishaupt. But in the middle of the 19th century, with the grand movement of spiritualism moving into every facet of society, the man on the picture here, a man by the name of Albert Pike, one of the greatest geniuses of the occult, who spoke and wrote in 16 languages fluently, hired by the federal government of the United States after he had fought as a general in the southern states in the Civil War. He was placed over an army of Indian nations, and he rapidly learned all their languages and was well acquainted with the secrets of their religion. Binding them together as the most terrifying army the world had ever seen, creating atrocities that resulted in the European nations interfering with the U.S. government, telling them that they had to disband this Indian army. This man, who had the capacity to bind those Indian nations together, entered into the highest ranks of Masonry and formed a new society that was called the New and Reformed Palladium Rite. He became the Grand Pope of Masonry and international conspiracy. It was this man, Albert Pike, that planned the destruction of the world in 3 world wars, and his writings can be read today. The plans were simply this: to open up Israel in the First World War for migration. In the Second World War, to work out things for it to become a state. And between the Second and Third World War, this occult conspiracy to dominate the world laid this terrible plan to build up the state of Israel financially and militarily, and to build up the Arab nations. And then when they reached an apex and balance of power, and the world was lined up on either side of the issue, to create incidents of war in that part of the world, to result in a great cataclysm. And in his own words, the purpose was to cause a great cataclysm, a great final war that would destroy both Christianity and absolute atheism. And the masses, discouraged with either one of these, would then turn to the truth, the religion of Lucifer. He made it clear to the people that Lucifer was a god that the people worship without any fear, without any superstition, that he was the brother of Jesus, he taught. But Lucifer had been lied about and maligned by Jesus, who they believed was the ruler of the dark side of the force, the evil god. And that one day in the future the Christians would be destroyed, and Luciferianism, this religion of light as they called it, would rule the whole world. This is at the apex of the entire movement of Lucifer today. The book that you see on the screen, Morals and Dogma by Pike, was written to give us an idea, or was written for Masons in each level of initiation up to the 32nd degree. Above the 32nd degree, it'll take up to 15 years, thousands of dollars, and traveling around this world to special retreats for instruction to get to the 33rd degree. Most people believe there's only 33 degrees, but now we know from study that there's degrees up to the 90th degree. Aleister Crowley was a 90th degree Mason, and he started the Rosicrucian Society in San Jose, indicating a close union. A friend of mine became a Rosicrucian, and one of the first things when he was initiated that he learned was that he would very soon be met by something called the White Brotherhood, who would teach him the mysteries, the secrets of the spirit world. Very soon he found out what it was. The Great White Brotherhood was the spirit world, and in his dreams he was taught the secrets of the occult. Supposedly Masonry claims that its purpose is to teach the consoling doctrine of the immortality of the soul. So in history, we have a number of converging movements. You have the public movement of spiritualism, the revival of witchcraft. At the same time, you have the Theosophy Society, merging it with the scientific and philosophical world. And then you have behind the scenes, underneath, a tremendous international movement to bind the whole world together under the worship of Lucifer. And I read you the prophecies that at the end of time, the spirits of devils would go forth to the kings of the world and bind them together to war against God. But remember what we had read, that Lucifer will manifest himself as the angel of light or truth. It could be your local church that's leading you down the path to hell, and you wouldn't even know it because you assume that it's truth. Anytime you run into teachings, philosophies, or theologies, or manifestations that are based upon the idea that man has an immortal soul, you're holding hands with the devil, no matter how nice and good the philosophy seems. The movement of this into scientific circles began to take place towards the end of the 19th century. The picture on the screen shows a number of people who were elite in society and scientists. These folks believed that everything that could be seen by the senses must be true. They had early on rejected the Bible as the answer to what was happening in our world. And they believed that Genesis was basically just a Hebrew myth that was devised in Babylon when they were incarcerated there. So when they would see physical manifestations caused by demons, they would believe it. And they had no other recourse but to try to explain it by the means of what the spirits were saying. The world was just set for tremendous deception, and there was very little outside of the Bible to warn people what was happening. I remember reading about one incident where a number of scientists were in the room. As they sat there quietly, a spirit manifested through the medium that was tied to the chair so she couldn't do anything that was deceptive. One of the scientists believed that it was a hoax, and he dove on the spirit to grab it and tear the clothing or the sheet off, to be soundly beaten up, beaten to a pulp, and then the spirit disappeared. We're dealing with terrifying powers when we're dealing with the occult. Do you think that man was a believer after that? Of course he was. The only ones that aren't protected from this are those who know their Bible and know that the dead know not anything and can command these demonic spirits to leave in the name of Jesus. One dear Christian woman, after her husband passed away, spent many lonely nights. One day she came to her pastor and she said, "Pastor, I can't bear it any longer. I don't know how long I'm going to last. Every evening, my husband comes through the doors in our living room and stands there and stares at me. And each evening I quote the Bible that the dead know not anything and command him to leave. And he turns around and walks away. But she said, I am so lonely. I don't know how long I can bear this. I miss my husband so badly." And the pastor and this lovely lady prayed together, bound the powers of the demons in the name of Jesus, and it never came back again. That's evidence, friends. Evidence that these spirits are not from the other world. It wasn't long ago, while I was in Berkeley doing a missionary project there, that a man came and introduced himself as a high priest in the occult. He said that he had 119 spirit guides that guided him, manifested to him, gave him powers and abilities, and he led out in a witchcraft cult or witchcraft church. I asked him if he would like for me to get rid of his demons for him. And in terror, he walked away. Friends, I don't care what these beings say. At the Word of God, they disappear. Please study the Word of God. If you look at this screen, you'll see two ladies, Leonora Piper and Eusebius Palladino. Leonora Piper was from the United States. Eusebius Palladino was from Italy. These two women were constantly surrounded by supernatural activity and became the focus of a number of scientific investigations because of just a few demons, maybe one, doing things around these women. The entire intellectual world was largely swayed by the manifestations. I don't care how intelligent a man is. One demon that is deceiving them or manifesting can deceive all of the brilliant brains in the world if they're not connected with the true God. This gentleman on the screen is named Daniel Holmes. He was called the Flying Scotsman. Daniel had so many manifestations that at one time scientists began to gather. In one episode that I read about, a group of these scientists were in his living room, several stories off the ground. The window was only open about 18 inches. And as they waited there for Daniel to come in, they were beginning to get a little irritated. When in a moment something whooshed through the window and Daniel was standing in the midst of them. The scientists demanded that he do it again. They didn't have a chance to analyze what had happened. And as they watched, before their astonished eyes, his body became stiff as a board. He levitated up into a horizontal position off the ground and whooshed out the window, hovering outside the window for a while, and in a moment whooshed back in, stood up, and began to talk. How could these men disagree with what their eyes were seeing? Just after the turn of the century, research libraries and research of this type began to develop. This is a picture of Harry Price in the National Laboratory of Psychical Research in London, 1927. When he started out, some people thought he was rather strange. But listen, with a collection of photographs and sounds that were gathered by this man, and prints and footprints and fingerprints and things that were gathered, the phenomenon that was observed, people began to believe it in the scientific circles. Also, I want to add here another movement of spiritualism that many of you need to know about. In the middle of the 19th century, in a whole nother vein of activity, something that would be later called the Aquarian Age or New Age movement was beginning to have its seeds. In 1844, a man was born by the name of Eliphas Levi. As he grew older, he left the narrow path of Christianity and united Christianity and the occult teachings together. He wrote a gospel that sounds just like a gospel in the New Testament. It was called the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, and that's what's on the screen right now. As you read this book, it reads just like a gospel, but it goes on and it describes where Jesus went. Supposedly during those years, the Bible doesn't say much about him. From the time that he was 12 to the time that he was 30 years old, 18 years, and he describes him as going around this world to Egypt and India and Tibet and gaining these occult abilities to perform miracles. In this way, the occult was beginning to accept Jesus as a Savior to them, as a God to them. And this has been refined through the years so that many Christians don't realize that the Christ that they're serving is not the Christ that is described in the Bible. One man that did a tremendous amount for the occult, and his books were published during the 60s, is on the screen. His name was Aleister Crowley. And if you look at this picture, he's the man that's standing up. The people that are kneeling around him in this occult coven, a prestigious coven for scientists and intellectuals and artists and singers, was called the Golden Dawn in London. And if you look at the back of the man in the foreground, you'll see the symbol of the Jewish religion. Almost all of these people were Jews. And you have to realize that the Jews had their own secret teachings from Babylon that were called the Kabbalistic rites or Kabbalism. And these teachings revolved around Chaldean astrology worship, and they made God, Jehovah, the same God as the devil by just simply turning the word around. They worshipped one God as both good and evil. A terrible system of studying the occult by the Jews. And largely, this area that was hidden deep within memorized initiation was largely behind much of the movement of the occult in this age. But eventually, Aleister Crowley was kicked out of this organization. Going to Egypt, he had a vision, and he believed it was being taught to him from the world of the dead that he was the beast of Revelation. He carried a staff with 666 on it. He sharpened his teeth, and he would bite people and suck their blood. He was a very odd character. But friends, that's the kind of character that you are aligning yourself with when you enter into the belief that beyond the grave there is life. This is a picture of Aleister Crowley as a young man. He was one of the healthiest and most powerful men in the world. He was one of the greatest mountain climbers in the world. He attracted 8 women to him that married him, and every one of them died insane. He himself died of syphilis as a raving maniac. Another area of the occult, and friends, there is no way that I would be able to really cover this subject. It took me years studying, and in just this short time we can only get a little glimpse of windows into how this thing how spirits have gone out all over the world and bound the world together. Adam Weishaupt was called the father of Jacobinism. Adam Weishaupt was a Jew and a Jesuit and a worshiper of the devil. He devised a system of taking over the world, and that system held the beliefs that communism holds today. He was responsible for the French Revolution, and that revolution has grown around the world. In the occult, the philosophy of humanism is the same as that is at the basis of communism. And it means that Americans today really believe the same philosophy basically as communists do. In the Theosophy Society, there was a number of efforts to prove that if man did not have any religions telling him what to do, and he didn't have any governments giving him laws, that he would naturally return to Adamic purity because every man, they believed, was intrinsically good. That the God self, or Lucifer, that is in every man, is a good God, a God of love and a God of light. And if he was just left alone by the institutions of the world, man would gravitate towards goodness. And so they tried time and time again to establish little utopian communist societies. They were tried many times in Europe, many times in America. The woman on the screen is a theosophist by the name of Catherine Tingley. And she started one of these groups at Point Loma, California. It lasted longer than any of the other groups. But the problem was that after a while, people would get to fighting. Do you know what one of these men said as he observed this phenomenon time and time again? The problem is we just can't find the right people to prove it. What the problem was that man is not intrinsically good. It's part of the lie of the immortality of the soul and the lie of the nature of Satan. You take any combination of men without the power of God's love controlling their lives, and you put them together for 24 hours a day, even for a month, and you'll find a bunch of men who are going to try to kill each other. The nature of Satan will come out unless we have religion, unless we have governments controlling or giving us boundaries. We need that today. Annie Besant, the one that I had mentioned, that came into the Theosophy Society and was largely involved in developing the concept of civil unrest, pacifist resistance to take over governments, later took the place of the seer Madame Blavatsky in what was a portion of the society that was considered to be esoteric, or that which studies the metaphysical elements of things. Now, Annie Besant was an interesting woman. She was very, very brilliant. In a continuing interest to bind spiritualism with science, her and another man, a man by the name of C.W. Leadbeater, began to experiment with self-hypnosis, meditation, in placing themselves into the world of what's called astral travel, or having your mind or your body travel through the electrical vibrations of nature. And they claimed that they would be able to infiltrate the molecules and analyze the world of science by seeing the molecules in spirit form. And they published thousands of pages on this type of dribble. You can still see this stuff, and you can buy it today if you would go to one of these centers around the world. There's still a center in India. There's still a center in the United States. There's centers in London and other places. Now, Leadbeater continued this research, and also he trained young boys. He was a homosexual. He had been a Roman Catholic, got into spiritualism, adopted Theosophy, started a Reformed Catholic church that was a spiritualistic organization. And one day, while one of the boys he was having an affair with, he claimed he noticed an aura around this boy that indicated to him that this boy was going to be the Christ. He continued to train this boy, and at one point the boy began to talk as if he was possessed by a spirit, and that spirit was Christ talking, and immediately tried to rush him to New York. The result of this boy, whose picture is on the screen, by the name of Krishnamurti, when he got to New York, the spirit left him. Why New York? The prophecies of the Bible indicate to us that the great movement of spiritualism will have its apex in its center here in the United States. And somehow the spirits guided them to bring this boy to the United States to announce that he was now the Christ. Well, he's not the Christ. Everything fell flat, and now he's one of the speakers still in the occult world that's believed to possess powers, Krishnamurti. Another man that Satan moved upon to take over the world was a man by the name of Adolf Hitler. He was a member of the Vril Society, which was a society that believed that the earth was hollow, that an advanced evolutionary race dwelt there called the Vril people and had the Vril power. And they believed that they lived in a place called Shambhala. He spent millions of dollars in the Third Reich trying to find the world of Shambhala to gain the secrets of the Vril power so that he could rule the world. Many didn't realize that. In the Thule Society of India, they used the swastika in the form of the destroyer. While when he was a child, in Bavaria, in the little school that he went to, on the altar of that Catholic church, yes, he was a Roman Catholic, was a symbol of the swastika, because the Roman Church uses all symbols of the pagan crosses today on their altars. Now Hitler, and his face is on the screen right now, was trained by a medium to be a medium for spirits in an effort of Satan to rule this world through this man. But I want to tell you something else. That Hitler was called by the Roman Church the child of the papacy. As spiritualism and Romanism worked together in the movement of the Third Reich to take over Europe and begin a confederation of German states to systematically take over the world. He was closely associated with a man by the name of Himmler, who led out in the SS, and Himmler's uncle was a Jesuit priest from the courts of Bavaria and came to lead out in the SS. That SS, or that occult society, was controlled by the Jesuit order within it. And you saw the terrible results of Lucifer's conspiracy in Europe. Friends, do you think it's going to be any different here at the end of time? Do you think that falling for the New Age movement is going to make any difference? Mussolini, the picture on the screen right now, was a Satanist, and at the same time the Roman Church brought him to power. Do you think that the movements that brought about the destruction of Italy at that time during the war are going to be any different than those that fall for these deceptions today? Absolutely not. I beg you to study your Bibles as you've never studied before. And please, friends, do not give in to the movement of spiritualism in any of its ramifications. The word spiritualism is rarely used for this movement of the belief in the state of the dead today. It comes in so many varied forms that no one can escape it except those who are bound to Jesus Christ by faith. In the book of 2 Thessalonians, we read about the last deception of the human family. It says, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivable of unrighteousness in them that perish. Real miracles, real wonders. And God has used the term all power. Evidently, for a period of time, God will allow Lucifer to use all his power of deception upon the human family. In biblical eschatology, we see that take place right here at the end of time. We're about to observe these manifestations, and it's described in this way. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed, and he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying unto them that dwell in the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by the sword and did live. In these passages, there's a union of spiritualism and Christianity in a taking over of the minds of the nations of the world at the end of time. How did the union of Christianity and spiritualism bond? Well, we know right from the beginning that spiritualists claim to believe in Jesus. one of the spirits that lived on after death. But more recently, you may have heard of the term the New Age movement. And that's what I'd like to begin our talk with here at this time. If you look at the screen, you'll see an entire library of blue books. These books were written by one author, one of the most prolific authors in history. Her name was Alice Bailey. And in the early part of this century, her and her husband Foster Bailey broke from the Theosophy Society and started a new society. This society is the first one that used the term the New Age. The Baileys set up a number of research centers, and one of those was in Ojai, California. And from there, there's a press that sends these teachings out all over. Now, if you look at the picture on the screen, you'll see some of the titles of the subjects that Bailey worked on. The Destiny of Nations, the Reappearance of the Christ, the Externalization of the Hierarchy. Every one of them is prophecy concerning how the spirit world, the occult world, would rise and take over the world. The entire world would be united in one great mass initiation into a next level of evolution, as they taught, into a spirit realm, an advanced period of time. And Jesus Christ, or the Spirit of the Christ, was considered to be the one who would lead us into this movement. The picture on the screen now is the door to their chapel or worship room or meditation room in Ojai, California. And I want you to notice some things about this door. As you look at the animals that are on it, you'll notice that they're signs of the zodiac. All the signs are on that door. This has its base in astrology worship, which originated in Babylon. And then if you look above that, you'll see O's and V's. Well, what significance does that have? The occult worship the serpent. And on the back of the cobra is where the O and the V and the U and the S, sacred symbols in the occult that represent the number 6 and its power. These people are virtually worshiping the ancient system of serpent or devil worship that came from the plains of Shinar. And they don't know it. It's all dressed up in a modern garb, a scientific garb. As I walked into the chapel, I noticed in the middle of the floor, and you can see it in this picture, crystals. They believe that energy from nature will be attracted through the crystals and then congregate around the area where the crystals are, and those who come to meditate in the room, like the gentleman that's on the screen right now, will be able to unite with nature better. Now, if you look at the wall on the far side, there's a picture there. It's a picture of Jesus, as it could be seen in the picture right now. On the left side of the room was a picture of the Christ. And on the right side of the room was a picture of the Buddha. These people worship the pagan gods, and they're uniting it with Christianity. The next picture is a picture of a man by the name of Benjamin Creme. Benjamin Creme was caught up in following the flying saucer movement, which teaches precisely the same system of mental exercises and communications with the other world, in this case, the other worlds out there. When he began to study the New Age teachings, he saw it was the same system, but in this system, the ones on the other side of the grave were spiritual masters or advanced people and beings that live in the hollow earth. In fact, Mary Besant, the leader of the Theosophy Society, told her that she was directed by the spirits that lived in the kingdom of Shambhala, the same place that Hitler was trying to find, and that she was directed to go to England and begin a movement in behalf of the indigenous Indians to regain their government for themselves. It was this movement, Theosophy, that got a hold of a man by the name of Gandhi and moved him into a prominent position. Now back to this picture of Creme. Creme then joined the New Age movement. He claimed that the Christ would come and that his name is Maitreya, the Buddhist name for the coming one, the loving one that's coming. He claimed that this Maitreya would fulfill all of the prophecies of all of the religions around the world, and took $200,000 of his own money and purchased full-page advertisements in the pages of the newspapers of the world. Even now, these people still claim that this man is simply waiting, a Pakistani man in London is waiting for the time when he is to go forward and manifest the Spirit of Christ before the world and lead them into this next age. Benjamin Crane wrote this book that's on the screen, The Reappearance of the Christ and the Masters of Wisdom, the Spirit World. The picture that I'm showing you is the World University of America. It's one of hundreds, if not thousands, of institutions in America and around the world that are presenting the idea that all religions are really one religion. When one looks behind the symbolism of all these religions, they believe you find the one universal religion. And when I went to this place, I was curious to talk to the person who was in charge, and it was a fairly pleasant lady. She had a number of doctorate degrees in comparative religion and philosophy and theology, and she was a very, very capable woman. And as we began to talk, and I mentioned Jesus, she says, we teach that Jesus was an important person here. And I talked about Lucifer. Yes, she knew what Lucifer was. And I said, now, you know that Lucifer fell from heaven. And she said, he never fell from heaven. Lucifer never fell. And she completely lost her composure. She says Christianity is a bloody religion, a terrible religion, a religion of hate. And there she exposed who her real God was. They believe that Lucifer never fell and that Jesus is the evil God. And many of her students will never know that. They tell folks that this is non-sectarian, but in fact it's a tremendous movement to establish Lucifer as the God of this world. The picture on the screen now is the chapel where the people come to get their instruction and their meditation. And it has the same symbol that is found on your dollar bill that was designed by the devil-worshipping Jewish Catholic priest, doctorate of canon law, Adam Weishaupt, who established the system of the Illuminati or Luciferian Conspiracy to take over the world. It's all working together. The kings or the spirits of demons are going forth to the rulers of the world to gather them together today. Now, the New Age teaches that the sun passes through 12 houses in its own cycle of its own zodiac. They claim that this cycle of going through one phase or one house of the zodiac takes place every 2,000 years. The picture on the screen right now represents the last period of 2,000 years. They say that that was the period of Christianity. And the picture shows two fish swimming in the opposite direction, one upside down from the other, tied together, and they believe that it was a period of bloodshed, violence, and confusion, although they believed that the Spirit of the Christ wanted to teach love and wanted to teach the social gospel. Now they teach that the new avatar would arise and the Spirit of Christ would come into him at the beginning of the next age, or the Aquarian age, symbolized by one pouring water out, symbolizing this a period of rising above and a period of occult supremacy. The picture on the screen now is the picture of the New Age Christ. If you look at the eyes, those eyes look exactly like the eyes of Charlie Manson, one who's still serving a life sentence for the brutal murder of a number of people. And the face is radiant because it's supposed to display that the Christ possesses this man and his effulgence goes out to the world, guiding man into this new age. It'll be Satan personating Christ in a last great effort to deceive the world. And scientists, men with intelligent minds, men who we look up to, teachers, educators that have turned aside from the Bible because of Satan's delusions and followed the teachings of evolution and atheism, even in this grand country that was established upon Christianity, are laying a foundation for deceiving the world by research into what they call psychic phenomena. Millions of dollars are spent in this country and millions around the world to investigate the phenomenon of spiritualism today. And of course, there's no way of going into some of these areas in a short talk like this, but scientists, educators, And young people going through the educational system are being dragged into spiritualism through science today. You've heard of Curlian photography that's represented by this picture on the screen. It's believed in the occult that every individual has this body that lives on after death. This body is an energy field that they believe cohabits ours, and that through certain mental exercises you can control that body. Like in the picture on the screen right now. It shows a man leaving his body connected by an electronic thread that comes from the pituitary gland in the brain. They believe that through mental exercises that a person can actually leave his body, travel around in time and distance and space, and then come back to his body at will. And thousands, if not millions, of young people have been deceived by this in workshops in our state universities. You can get a 4-year degree in witchcraft today. The last time they surrounded the administration building in Berkeley, California to do a student demonstration, it was a group of witches with robes, students in the classes there at the college holding hands, doing a witchcraft chant. That's where the world is going today. The next picture is a picture of Edgar Cayce, who made the whole concept of holistic medicine very popular by his psychic readings. He claimed, just like a Hindu guru would, that his mind made contact with a secret place in the universe called the Akasha Records, where he's supposed to have gathered all this knowledge. Because of so many of his unconscious readings became accurate, again it added fuel to the idea that the human mind can contact the world beyond and be used for humanitarian purposes today. And that's why this picture on the screen here shows a holistic health food store. Many people don't realize that much of the holistic movement is bound in witchcraft and occultism today and is an evangelical tool for the devil. People in this movement believe that they're improving their body and mind. They are. But they're improving it for the purpose of communication with the spirit world. Many of these people are actually more sincere than our Christians. When my wife was having our last child, we didn't want to have it in a hospital, so we looked for a midwife. We found a wonderful young woman, and her whole interest in life was in serving people. And as we talked with her, we knelt and we prayed with her, and she would pray to God. And when we visited her house, one day I noticed her book. There wasn't a Christian book in the house. Every book was an occult book. And later when she came back to the trailer where we were living, I said, "Are you a witch?" And she said, "Yes, I am. How did you know?" "Well, I noticed your books." "Where did you pick up your faith at?" It was a witch on the East Coast. But I don't go in for the practice of witchcraft or the craft. I'm interested in serving humanity with natural therapies. It's a tremendous deception. She was a lovely lady. And I believe many of these people, if we can get our act together as Christians, can be won to our faith. Many of these people may be more sincere than we are. But it was a witch that delivered our child. An amazing and shocking experience. The picture on the screen right now illustrates the fact that much of the massage, much of the natural therapy comes from the philosophy of the East or from China and revolves around the teaching of the body aura and the science of Kundalini or the serpent energies in the body. They believe that there are 7 or so chakra points in the spine where the circulation of body energies flow through. These are in contact with every organ. And by touching certain locations on the body called the acupuncture or acupressure points, which are laid out in 360 points originally and 12 meridians after the astrological teachings of the heavens, that somehow they can balance out the flow of body energy and balance the yin and yang in the body. And this has become the foundation of many of modern healing techniques. People getting into the areas of these electrical or aura healings are dangerously treading on the area of witchcraft and the occult. You've heard of the pyramid power. It's the same concept of energies that can be used. The pyramid was used by the ancient priests of Egypt for initiation. They'd put a man in a coffin there. The man would lay in the coffin, and then his spirit, supposedly, through the energy force in the pyramid, would shoot straight up into the heavens, be purified, make contact with the gods, and come to earth, and then he would be a medium between heaven and earth. These energy fields are areas where Satan can come into your mind and contact you from his world. Now, a man by the name of Bovis, a French scientist, once put his scientific equipment in the middle of a pyramid, and he found that these tremendous forces flowed through there. And since that time, pyramid power has become popular. And friends, if people that don't believe the Bible will take these interesting phenomena that they think are natural and will play around with them, with the results that they lose control over their own mind. A dear friend of mine who experimented with astral travel found one day he couldn't come back to his body in his mind. He was being thrown through outer space, through the stars in his thinking, and he was being taken to destruction, and he cried out, even in his ignorance of God, he cried out, "God, save me." And as he continued to pray that God would save him, he was systematically brought into the Christian faith and became a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. Today, many people with the wands and the water wishings and the pendulums to search for water or items don't realize that that's another medium by which satanic spirits can control our hearts and control our minds. The picture on the screen now is a woman who is ignorantly playing around with the devil doing water witching, claiming that the body is an electronic instrument and through that stick will have a sympathetic electronic attraction to the water, which has a slight magnetic charge. Friends, I studied with a man who did this professionally for a while. He came to me privately and he said, "Listen, I can't love my wife anymore and I don't know what's wrong. I don't love my children and I'm an elder in a church and yet I have no interest in Christianity." He says, "I know that something's wrong inside me. I can't even read my Bible." We got down on our knees and prayed. I found out that he had done water witching, and we bound the power of Satan. And I had him confess the sin of being in contact with the occult. 2 weeks later, his wife came to me. She says, "I don't know what you talked to my husband about, but he's not the same man. He's out there visiting people in their homes and praying with them. He studies his Bible every evening, and we have the most loving relationship today." Friends, you get involved with these spirits and you lose the joy of life that can come with a proper relationship with God. The picture on the screen now, a dragon with two little children, illustrates the kind of things that many people's minds have been grown up on. Look at this, Mickey Mouse, the Sorcerer's Apprentice. You probably thought that at least Disneyland was okay, but it's not. The next scene shows Mickey Mouse from his fingers coming electrical energy of witchcraft. Disneyland and these cartoons and television is a means by which occultism is being pumped into the minds of your children. Get the television out of your house. Destroy it if you have to. It's one of the main mediums for spiritualism today. Today, some of these great movies, like the one on the screen called Gremlins, take the images of devils and embed them into the minds of children and create whole avenues of terror that can be tapped in by demons as we enter into the time of trouble. And you're making it impossible for your children to find a Savior in this way. Demons are entertaining our children across the screen today. The game Dungeons and Dragons has become so popular in the last 2 decades, and again, it trains young people to become fascinated with and exercised in the knowledge of the occult. And the picture on the screen is one of their advanced Dungeons and Dragon players' handbooks that has incantations and tells you what powers you'll have in your particular role. The picture on the screen now is to illustrate that thousands and thousands of young people, because they don't have a good Christian family, they're raised in humanistic institutions that leave them empty, are searching for spiritual reality. And friends, they're going into the occult because Christianity is failing them. Where is the hope for the future? Look at the picture on the screen now. Doesn't that tug at your heart to see little children raised by people who have come into the occult? What hope do they have? There are probably about 4 million children today that are missing, and many of them are used as human sacrifices, and that information can be documented from many sources and television programs that have tried to warn parents of the dangers of these covens. The picture on the screen right now is a coven. This was published in National Geographic. A coven is usually a little witchcraft church group of about 13. When the picture was taken, they noticed blue electric energy across that screen around this group. And look at the children, what chance do they have? We need to be close to God and be solidly founded upon truth, and then we need to reach out to these people. Children are being trained in the arts of the occult that are thousands and thousands of years old. Many of these young people are brought into this while they're in high school. Look at the picture of this witch's face on the screen today. These people are not happy. They're searching for something. And many people go to their death dying of drugs or being destroyed by demons or something in one way or another, thinking that they'll find power and thinking that they'll find happiness in these movements. The book The Necronomicon and other books like it can be found on almost any bookshelf in any bookstore. These books tell young people how to make the symbols on the floor and how to call up demonic spirits to carry out their own will. And it works. How terrifying, because once you think you're using those demons, you find they've taken over your entire life. Many of these young people commit suicide or their lives are ruined. The picture on the screen is a mass murderer. Many of the great mass murderers of the last 2 decades have been people who have been controlled by occult. The son of Sam, the man on the picture right now, claimed that Sam was the devil and that he had an insatiable desire for blood. The new movement of ERA, the effect of humanism on our educational system today, are destroying the very fabric of the family. The picture on the screen now, the NEA, the National Education Association, is enforcing the concept of humanism, which is in reality the philosophy of witchcraft. Many people don't even realize it. They have the basic philosophy of witchcraft, although they'd be horrified if they thought that that was the case. When these humanists get a hold of our children in the schools, they do everything they can to erase and destroy the family and Christian culture. Today, astrology is coming back. The picture on the screen shows a baby controlled by the planets. People believe that as they're born today, that they're under the control of the planets, just like the old occults during the ignorant periods of time in the past. Ouija boards, the picture on the screen is outselling Monopoly today. And when people touch that little indicator that goes from letter to letter, they're actually being guided by spirits from another world. There are many books that have exposed this thing, but who's studying? Who's reading? And who's preparing for what's coming? The United States and the world will degenerate into the same world as India, like the picture on the screen. I've been to India, friends. I've seen the result of New Age thinking on the lives of those dear people. Thousands and thousands of them are on the streets today, and every evening they have to lay in the dirt on the side of the road. Millions of them live in shanty towns, and they have no hope of the future except to be reincarnated in endless cycles. It's destroyed an entire civilization, and God has allowed us to see that, to know what's happening to our world, and He's going to interrupt this thing. This movement is a conspiracy. If you look at the picture, you'll see the Aquarian Conspiracy, a book by Marilyn Ferguson that came out in the 70s that gives us or the early 80s, that gives us a picture of the fact that there's a vast coalition of occult interests around the entire world that's moving us reluctantly but forward into a whole new way of thinking, a whole new age of occult supremacy. The work of men through the dark ages of conspiracy are now blossoming in the world, and we're finding ourselves bound by Satan. In the book, A Trip into the Supernatural, Roger Morneau found out the secret of the New Age. In that book, he points out that as he came into this devil-worshipping group that worshiped fallen angels, that in the worship room they saw a painting. And he asked, who's this a painting of? The priest says this is a painting of Satan. Yes, he says, you probably wonder where the animal-like characteristics have gone. And this priest laughed. He says it's very important that Satan or these demons make it so that people do not believe that spirits really exist, so that they can control in the years ahead. He pointed out that all a person had to do to come under the control of the devils that these men worship was just not align themselves with Christianity, and they would naturally become under the control of the devil and become part of his kingdom at the end of time. They taught that thousands of years ago that their master came to this world because of a misunderstanding in heaven, that he used the inhabitants of this world for his kingdom, and that one day a confrontation will take place between him and Christ, and that Christ will be overcome, and those that follow the devil, no matter what area they come to him through in the occult, whether it be flying saucers, whether it be the movement of rock and roll, whether it be through television, whether it be through seances, no matter what, or false Christianity, no matter what avenue they come through, they will be part of Satan's kingdom. When a man enters upon the pathway of self, says Spangler, he enters in a new realm of evolution that's controlled by Lucifer. Today we're in the midst of a destruction of Christianity, and I beg you not to be a part of that movement. Grab your Bible and study and find the real Savior.
The Luciferian Conspiracy begins with the lie that man is immortal. Nothing has caused more heartache than the loss of a loved one, nor any question more stirring than where will I go when I die? As you and I look in the mirror, we see the wrinkles form and the gray hairs. We are dying while we're alive. Death is stalking as a relentless predator. We never know where or when it's going to strike next. It may be a loved one, or even ourselves. If a lying spirit made contact with us from the dead, we'd certainly believe it, wanting to believe that our loved one is alive, or that there is life for ourselves beyond the dead. Life is such a precious thing. The mystery of life has been something that has been sought after by man in every age. Men have done terrible things in their search for life to unlock these mysteries. They've beat and damaged their own bodies. They've listened to the lying teachings of esoteric priests, offering up their own children as human sacrifice. In each country there are gods that represent death and life. Egypt, it's a scarab beetle, Osiris or Serapis. In the Greek culture was the god Zeus, holding the lightning bolt in his hand, a symbol of the life forces, the energies of nature. In India, the symbol of the serpent represented the life forces. Indeed, in almost every country, the symbol of the serpent is a symbol of healing or life. The seven-headed dragon was a symbol of the life forces, the controlling power of nature in every culture of the world. Men even worship their genitals, the phallic god, Dionysius, Bacchus, or Osiris, as symbols of the life force. Indeed, all the gods of the mysteries were symbols of this mysterious energy that surrounded and filled all nature. People wore jewelry to give themselves more of these powers. The search for the occult powers has gone on in every age and in every way. There are tremendous pseudosciences that revolve around the electrical energies. John Dee in England did his research first as a medical doctor and then into the world of the occult, talking to the dead, foretelling the future. These practices went underground during the rise of the Roman Catholic Church. It was persecuted much as early primitive Christianity was, and thus the old esoteric cults began to die out, and the research was done in secret, in the mysteries. The state religion of Rome was Mithra, and underneath the old cathedrals of Europe today, we find the pagan temples of Mithra is where the Christians first began to worship. Thus we know that spiritualism, occultism, was absorbed by the Christian church in her effort to evangelize the world. The mystery of the wafer is the mystery of absorbing the life forces. Sunday was the symbol of the sun's power. and the sun representing all these energy fields in nature. The priests carried these divining rods or staffs with them, and when they were buried, they were actually worshipped after death. The confessional and the teachings of the eternal burning hell were all things that were copied from the spiritualistic teachings of the occult world. The use of women in religious services, setting them apart for special purposes, again was a copy of the temple priestesses of the occult world. Little do we know of the suffering of these nuns behind the walls of the cloistered convents. The Inquisition was set up to persecute anyone who disagreed with the church. And so the research into the occult went into the secret world. The real history of spiritualism is the history of the secret societies. In the church, the Templars united their interests with the Ismail of the Ottoman Empire. Here, in their secret rites, in their castles around Europe, they carried on the mysterious rites of the occult. They kissed a statue of a goat-headed god in their initiation. Persecuted by the church, they fled into the British Isles, and there in 1717 set up the first Masonic Lodge. In these lodges, men took death oaths to keep their teachings secret. Although they flaunted biblical symbolism, Christian and Hebrew symbols, such as the Bible and Solomon's temple, as we look closely at these things, we'll find it surrounded by the occult symbolism of Babylon, Egypt, and India, as the Bible is only used as an allegory of the astrology worship of the ancient occult mysteries. Solomon's temple was the soul man or the sun man or the sun god's temple. We know that the cubic stone representing character represented in the mysteries 6 sides and 12 lines, or the system of astrology. If you look on the eastern wall of this Masonic lodge, you'll see a G and a pentagram. The G represents God. The pentagram is a symbol of the ruler of the dark forces, or Satan. The god of Masonry is Lucifer, or Satan. And when these occultists say, "Our Father which art in heaven," they are not referring to the God of either the Hebrews or the ancient or the Christians, but they are referring to the god Lucifer. Once a Mason is passed to the ranks of initiation, he becomes a pagan nature worshiper, irrespective of whether he originally was a Christian, a Hebrew, or even a believer in the god Allah, because there is an Islamic branch as well. Part of the Luciferian mysteries is the teaching of evolution, or the transmigration of the souls. No modern scientist developed the teaching of evolution. It was a teaching of the Luciferian mysteries from the time of Babylon. The idea that there are electronic magnetic forces from one mind to the other was also a teaching in the mysteries. It's not anything new today. Adam Weishaupt was a devil worshipper, a Luciferian, and he laid out a plan to take over the entire world. 1776 he published his plan, and in 1789 it got its start in the French Revolution. First workout in the French Revolution. Following him, Mazzini took over, and then the demonic man Albert Pike became the great Grand Master of Masonry. Pike perpetuated the Luciferian Revolution. The religion is Manichaean neo-Gnosticism, teaching that the divinity is dual and that Lucifer is the equal of Adonai, the god of the Christians. With Lucifer, the god of light and goodness, struggling for humanity against Adonai, the god of darkness and evil. No matter what rite, the great architect of the universe is not the god worshipped by the Christians. Many of America's presidents have been Masons. In 1921, Colonel Mandel House set up the Council on Foreign Relations, the Luciferian Conspiracy in the United States. In 1913, with Wilson, they captured the destiny of America's financial institution. Mussolini was a Satanist, an occult worshiper, and Hitler was a member of the Vril and Thule Society, both Hindu societies whose symbols was the swastika. He and Himmler believed that there was a world beneath the earth called Shambhala with Vril power. They tried to tap into the Vril power and felt if they could find it, they would rule the world. In the SS initiation, they took a vow to Lucifer at midnight. The racist concept, evolutionary teaching of Hitler that destroyed so many millions of people is the same philosophy that's behind the whole New Age Luciferian movement today. Aleister Crowley was one of the leaders of the occult world. His law of man indicates the kind of law that the occultists believe. That man has the right to do whatever he wants to do on the earth, to work as he will, play as he will, rest as he will, die when and where and how he will. That man has the right to eat what he will, to drink what he will, dwell where he will, to move as he will on the face of the earth. That man has the right to think what he will, speak what he will, write, draw, dress as he will. That man has the right to love as he will, to take his fill and will of love. That man has the right to kill anyone who would get in his way. The slave shall serve. Crowley was an example of the selfish immorality of Luciferianism. It was in the middle of the 19th century that the movement of spiritualism became real popular. It started in Hydesville, New York. A couple of little girls called the Fox Sisters heard some rappings in their bedroom. From that time on, in 12 countries simultaneously, spiritualism was born. These young girls became mediums. 100 mediums began in New York that year. It spread everywhere. Everyone was wanting to know something about the occult. Men like Daniel Douglas Holmes, the Flying Scotsman, Eusebius Palladina, and Leonore Piper, mediums that had many things happen around them, became popular objects of psychic scientists who were trying to explain in some way the mysteries of the occult, but without believing the Bible. The Eddy brothers in Vermont established an inn for psychics to come to. There they had a stage, and they would put on psychic performances where spirits would dance and play music and things on stage. Henry Alcott, a lawyer from New York, was very interested in the occult and went to the Eddy Brothers Inn to find out about these things. There he met a Russian seer by the name of Helena Blavatsky. She had also come there to investigate the Eddy Brothers phenomenon. Together, they established the Theosophy Society in 1875. In 1877, she published 2-volume set Isis Unveiled. Working together, they eventually went to India and established the center of the Theosophy Society there. Coming back from India, in London, Madame Blavatsky wrote The Secret Doctrine and published it in 1888. It became the foundation of occult philosophy from that time. Mary Besant took over Blavatsky's place. She worked in India to establish human rights movement there. She claimed that she was directed by the god of the underworld, or Shambhala, the lord of the world. She worked closely with a man named Leadbeater, a homosexual and a former Roman Catholic. Leadbeater, now a spiritualist, entered into research in the area of mind sciences. He noticed the aura of a young man, Krishnamurti, and believed that this would become the Maitreya, or the Christ, but they were terribly disappointed. Catherine Tingley, another theosophist in America, tried to establish a communist program, a utopian society in Point Loma, California. Manly P. Hall, the great Masonic writer, claims that his inspiration came from the Secret Doctrine. Eliphas Levi wrote the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus Christ, the occult explanation of the 18 lost years of Jesus, where they claim that he learned the mysteries of the occult. Alice Bailey established the Arcane School. Now, Alice Bailey merged Christianity and the occult movement, the Luciferian teachings, and formed what we know of as the New Age movement. She was a prolific writer. She believed that these secret Tibetan masters that were communicating with mankind were leading them into a new age of evolution, and that soon this secret hierarchy would become a public hierarchy when every human being was initiated into the Luciferian religion. Her and her husband, Foster Bailey, established the Crotona Institute in Ojai, California. Visitors come there today. There's a press there. Publications are sent all over the world. In their meditation room, I noticed the door to it had not only symbols of astrology, but the V and the O. I know from studying Gnosticism that these were symbols of the cobra, or of the serpent power, symbols of the god Lucifer. In the room, there were crystals. They believe that these attract cosmic energies or forces. A young man was meditating there in front of them, and behind him I was shocked to see a picture of Jesus on the wall, as they worship Jesus, but not the Jesus that you and I know of. On the other wall was the Buddha. They worship Jesus and Buddha together. In Ojai, California, the World University of America teaches occult sciences. I talked to the proprietor. She became angry when I suggested that Lucifer had fallen, violently angry. The symbol in their meditation room was the same as on our dollar bill, that which was designed by Adam Weishaupt, the symbol of world revolution and Luciferian conspiracy. Benjamin Cream, once a worshiper of the saucer intelligences, now has accepted the teachings of these spirit masters of Lucifer worship. He published an announcement in newspapers all over the world stating that the Christ was now here, and believes that very soon Maitreya, the Buddhist Christ, will manifest himself to the world, and believes he's a prophet to bring that message everywhere. Marilyn Ferguson, in her book The Aquarian Conspiracy, is teaching that the world is passing into a whole new age. This is called the Age of Aquarius. They say that the last 2,000 years was a period of Pisces, of Christian supremacy, but that the next 2,000 years is the Age of Aquarius, when the occult will be revived. They believe that we're about to receive a new avatar. An avatar is a teacher, a great world teacher or master to come before mankind and lead him into the next step of evolution. This new teacher, although he's called the Christ, is not the Jesus Christ of the Bible that many people worship today. But this New Age teacher is the spirit of what they call the Christ. The one they claim will inhabit the body of a man and will guide humanity into an age of peace, an age of spiritual enlightenment. This is the fastest growing movement in the world. Thousands have claimed to look for the coming of some sort of Savior. The Jews a Messiah, the Christians Jesus Christ, the Buddha Maitreya. The Luciferians claim that this one that is coming will answer the need and the cry and the prophecies of every religion in the world. A vast movement for the initiation of the entire human race is taking place today. Harry Price established his laboratory for psychical research in London. Since then, psychic research, or ghost busting, has become a universal pastime made popular by the movie Ghostbusters. Psychic research is taking place all around. It's believed that the unconscious aspect of men's minds has hidden powers, and that through mental exercises men can somehow harness these powers. Today, through radio, television, movie entertainment, it's becoming evident that people like Matthew Manning, who show psychic powers, or this man here who's thinking into a camera and the impression is on the film, or this photograph of a ghost, is all aspect of what men's mind can do. Ouija boards are now outselling Monopoly games. People are experimenting with hypnotic mind travel called astral projection, believing that in the hidden resources of man's minds are supernatural electrical powers that he can harness that actually create its own alternate realities. The man can go back into the past, or that man can heal. Edgar Cayce made popular the idea of psychic healing, and he was a prominent member of what we call the holistic movement today, which is the natural side, the pseudoscience side of Lucifer worship. Today there are classes and seminars, classes in colleges and universities that are teaching that man's body is an electrical unit that the energies of nature can pass through and bring healing to other people. When you walk into a holistic restaurant, a holistic health food store, this is not a Christian institution, but it's an institution that believes that man can raise this power of the unconscious mind to his higher nature through healthful living, and actually gain control of his environment. Many people are unwittingly being brought into the occult through water dowsing. This ancient art of finding water is the use of man's body as an electrical conduit. The use of the pendulum, the wand, all of these things are used in the occult circles. Some people have become completely controlled by the occult because of these sciences. It's now believed that three-dimensional items can attract these electromagnetic forces. The pyramid in Egypt has long been known to be an attractor and condenser of energy. From the ancient esoteric religion passed all the way down to this time, it's believed that its passageways and its tunnels hold prophecies. Bovis discovered these electrical energies in the pyramid. Today, people are believing that these magnetic fields control every aspect of our life, and there's a rebirth in astrology worship, believing that the planets somehow hold a magnetic pull, and depending upon what way they are aligned and where the sun is at the time one's born, your entire destiny, they believe, is determined. I believe that the spirits can do this, can guide a man's destiny by the planets, if he is not controlled by another power. Because of these powers, many of the leading scientists have entered into studies in the area of the psychic sciences. The world has been prepared for this new occult age by children being taught myths and legends from the time that they're little children as part of literature in high school and college. How can they escape when the subconscious mind is full of the idea of fantasy and magic? Walt Disney has become one of the greatest promoters of the occult. Many parents think it's safe, but it is not. It'll bring their children into spirit worship in time. Here Mickey Mouse is playing the part of a wizard, and you've heard of Darby O'Gill and the Little People and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. All are occult. Cartoon programs on TV today are attracting children into the occult sciences. Demons are entertaining our children today and are dancing across the screen. These are being imbued into the mind of children. Terror is there. One little program called Gremlins, soft little fuzzy things, become demons to the children. Children never forget these things, and they become means of affecting the rest of their life. The most popular game today is Dungeons and Dragons, an occult game of imagery. The occult believes if you can control a man's imagination, you control his whole life. They teach if you can imagine things hard enough, they'll come true. This is a revival of the ancient Northern European witchcraft, the belief in the cosmic powers of the ancient European witchcraft gods. Dungeons and Dragons has a powerful effect upon the mind. When pressed with the secret of Dungeons and Dragons' success, Gygax concedes when you can choose the character you want and acting out all your deepest fantasies of your own heroism, send that character into the most fantastic, unexpected situations in search of valuable treasures. When you can see that character gaining experience and proficiency, then you have gained a direction for your entire future. The manuals of Dungeons and Dragons actually have the spells in it and tell you about the magic that you will have, the different implements of occult art that you will carry out in your imagination. Once these things are imbued into a man's imagination and his imagery takes on a certain personality, there is a spirit that works in that person's life from that time forward. Books have come out now and are explaining that the occult explosion is taking place all around us. Many Americans don't see it, but young people are joining occult groups and cult groups far faster than they're joining Christianity today, and their children have almost no chance for the future. Witchcraft is Lucifer worship is the fastest growing worship in the entire world. Images of the occult and Satanism have been flaunted so long and so hard through music and through television, through radio, that young people in colleges and universities taking classes there in the occult have moved right into it, and it's become a common concept in society today. This newspaper article tells about witches that do a public ancient witchcraft rite that is thousands and thousands of years old, and inviting the public to come and see it. People are involving themselves in fire walking today. What is this developing? A whole new age of morality where women want to give up the natural responsibilities of women. The book The Necronomicon, Witchcraft Rites, is now available publicly in any bookstore. Anton LaVey, San Francisco, has formed a satanic church in America, and it has its place among the churches of the world today. Many young people are getting into Satanism because of the belief that they can gain powers for themselves, powers that will give them money and wealth. Young people are locked into groups of 13 called covens. There are thousands of these across America. They're brought into it in elementary school and high school, many times by their teachers or their friends in school. Keep your children out of public school. Today, churches are being vandalized by Satan worshipers and witches. Mass murderers are often connected with occult or witchcraft groups. The son of Sam claimed that Sam was the devil and that he had an insatiable thirst for human blood. Part of the Luciferian Conspiracy is the humanistic revolution to force the Christian God out of the educational system in America. The NEA, the National Education Association, has worked close with the Teachers Union to force humanism into the class. It's destroying the Christian morality, making the children look to themselves for their own morality. Many parents have tried to keep their children at home to educate them because of the atheism that's in the school system. But where the NEA is strong and where the Teachers Union is strong, these families are harassed by legal authorities. The Homeschool Legal Defense Association based in Washington said an estimated 35,000 families are threatened with legal action last year. The worst states were North Dakota, Michigan, Idaho, Florida, and Texas. We're in a war against the occult. What Todd warned us about is actually happening. Lucifer worship is taking over the entire American society. The book A Trip into the Supernatural explains that the most important people are part of an elite group of spirit worshippers. One gentleman explained that going to seances and this type of thing was of very little value, that the real source of power is to be found in the worship of demons or the fallen angels. He was the leader of a band, and he explained that when he became a demon worshiper, that money flowed in. Their fees were the highest in the industry. People liked to dance to the music. In reality, the spirits, he said, controlled us, or other words, possessed us, energized us, and in turn we passed the influences on to the people. They liked what they got, and they kept returning for more of the same. The pictures that were in the chapel room there, they said, these are the gods that our folks talk about, the chief counselors. They rule over legions of spirits. After they materialized, we photographed them, and then we made these paintings of them. At the end of the room was a large altar, and when they looked closely at it, there was a majestic looking individual in that painting. The priest explained that this was Satan. He chuckled at their surprise and then said it was solemnly important that the next generation believe that the master and the spirits do not exist, so that they can rule the inhabitants of this planet successfully in the decades just before us. The priest stated that everyone they could make to disqualify themselves from being a member of Christ's kingdom automatically became a member of Satan's kingdom. The satanic priest explained that thousands of years ago, his master had jurisdiction over countless numbers of beings in the universe. He became misunderstood and was forced to flee his domain. The inhabitants of this earth, it says, kindly welcomed him, and he deceived them in order to take over them. When it became known that his rival Christ would come to earth after assuming the nature of a man to attract humanity to himself, the master and his counselors decided to follow a strategy similar of that one that originally enabled them to take this planet. This planned course of action would require all demonic spirits to carefully counsel human beings to live in a way that would disqualify themselves from becoming members of Christ's kingdom. The spirits would encourage people to listen to their feelings instead of the words of Christ and his prophets. In no sure way could the spirits obtain control of the people's lives without the individuals realizing what was happening. Let's look into the Bible and see what the words of Christ and his prophets are that Satan does not want us to know. First, in Genesis chapter 2, we learn that, "And the Lord formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul." So the word breath is synonymous with a living soul and life. Let's look at the early Hebrew use of the word ruach. We find that it means breath, and then it means life and a rational soul. These are the earliest uses of the word and the correct use of the word. Seeing its use in Psalms 104 verse 29, "Thou hidest thy face, they are troubled, thou takest away their breath or their life, they die and return to their dust. Thou sendest forth thy spirit, and they are created, and thou renewest the face of the earth." So that we understand that with the animals, God gave them life or his breath. The same is true of man in Psalms 146. We're told, "Put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man, in whom there is no help. His breath or his life goes forth, he returns to his earth. In that very day his thoughts perish, or his rational mind disappears. There is no knowledge after death. The living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more reward, For the memory of them are forgotten, also their love and their hatred and their envy is now perished. Neither have they any more a portion forever in anything that is done under the sun. Ecclesiastes 9. Solomon makes it clear that there is no memory after death. He goes on to say in verse 10, "Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with all thy might, for there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave whither thou goest." Life ends there. We look in Nahum 1:10 to see the end of the wicked. It says, "For while they be folded together as thorns, and while they are drunken as drunkards, they shall be devoured as stubble, fully dry." No eternal burning hell. It makes it clear in verse 9 that affliction shall not rise a second time. Death will be permanent in the final judgment. The last prophet in the Old Testament, Malachi, the last chapter, we read, "For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly, shall be stubble, and the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness rise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. And ye shall tread down the wicked, for they shall be ashes under the soles of your feet in the day that I do this, saith the Lord of hosts." Another end, utter end, will come to those who do not believe faithfully in the true Jesus Christ, the only name given among men whereby we must be saved. A narrow path leads to life eternal, not the many paths of the occult world. God wants to invite us home. Satan wants to make sure that we never go home, that we perish eternally. I urge you to listen to the voice of Christ in the words of Him and His prophets. There are so many things working against us today. One of the most potent, deceptive forces in the world today is that of rock and roll music. Let's look into this subject together. Satan came down from heaven to destroy all who loved God. He determined to use his powers of music. We understand that Lucifer fell from heaven because he wanted to become God himself. The Bible tells us that his pipes and his tabourets were made within him in the day that he was created. Well, this leads us to understand that music will play an important part of his deceptive power. We find that the pagan god Apollo is seen with his lyre here. We find that the Greek Pythagoras said that God was to be thought of in the form of 3 notes of an instrument. Music played an important part in the initiations in the Orpheus cults. Indeed, all the cults of the world use music as initiation into demonic possession, into occultism. A witch doctor, seeing a spirit, would direct the people to paint their faces up or cut their bodies to look like it and to dance like it, and that way gain the power of the spirit, all done to the driving beat. The same was done in preparation for war from Scandinavia to the jungles of Africa. People used the beat to fill their minds with hate. In the Taipusam, the beat is used to gain spirit possession in Singapore. Years later, today, they are now using rock and roll to gain the same spirit possession. Some sort of mind preparation has to go into effect to gain firewalking. That same preparation is necessary in this healing episode with this witch doctor. It is the driving beat. This beat, Pavlov, the Russian scientist, harnessed in order to gain control over the reflexes of animals. In one experiment, Pavlov conditioned a dog to be excited at a fast beat and inhibited at a slow beat. Then when he took and he ran the 2 beats together in a syncopated beat style, the dog's nervous system was destroyed, as its mind did not know how to respond. Lenin said, "You've saved the revolution," and they formed a music form that would destroy the Western world. They tied it into a music form already over here, the African beat. That music form was used in the occult world of Africa and among the slaves, and has been adapted to the gospel music that's in the South today. This music was adapted by the communists to form a folk music, which later was formed into a music called rock and roll. Rock and roll is a word that means sexual intercourse. And young people, once they were brought in contact with this music that had high sexual overtones to its lyrics and an exciting driving beat, while at the same time they were taught in a Protestant ethic not to be involved in premarital sex, caused the collusion effect in their nervous system, caused rebellion and violence. But as dangerous is the high decimal level that the young people listen to this music at. The music is listened to decimal level up to 125, while a decimal level of 90 is the level of pain. The young people just experience the music. It goes right through their bodies. Some of the young people would put eggs, raw eggs, up along the stage in front of the great speakers there, and the high whining music would actually coagulate the fats and the proteins. Well, they didn't realize it, friends. This music was also destroying the delicate tissue of their nerves, their brain. It was affecting the nutritional element of their bloodstream. It was damaging their ears and the delicate cochlea and the cilia, making it harder for them to hear. Those that have been in constant contact with this music as a profession have led lives of debauchery and ruin. Janis Joplin committed suicide. Jimi Hendrix overdosed on drugs and suffocated in his own vomit. Highest paid performer in the area of rock music. In his time, he became a spirit worshiper. He would see ghosts and flying saucers over the stage. We know that Elvis Presley, one of the longest playing recording artists, eventually overdosed on drugs and left his wife. These have become the heroes of a whole generation of young people. Those early recording artists dressed to appeal to the public. The young men reflected that of dream boys or lover boys. There was an all-American look. But in the early 60s, things began to rapidly change. When the Beatles came over to this country, they introduced backmasking and subliminal masking on their recordings. This encouraged the young people to drugs and to violence and to communism and to hatred to parents. The young people didn't realize what was happening to them. They obeyed their new masters who could speak right to their unconscious minds. You know, Timothy Leary promoted LSD, and thousands of young people committed suicide because of this new effort of the drug world and the occult world. Young people were told to get involved in violence, and the new morality was born as syphilis and other diseases of that kind arose with the open sex and love-ins. It eventually led to violence, and even today we have communism and socialism rife on the campuses among the teachers and students. In the early 60s was also a new form of music called punk rock. It started out with gross photography of people being mutilated and tortured, and eventually became a rock form where people dressed up as bisexuals. They glorified pain, destruction, death, and finally, friends, devil worship. As you look at the covers of these records, you see the pain and the bloodshed and the violence that now attracts young people. In order to get a continued turn on, they have to look to death and pain, and everything revolting and everything vulgar is now what attracts our children. What will the next generation be like if this continues to go? Through the use of the lights, the driving beat, and lyrics, Satan's spell is complete in rock performances. From Sunset Strip to Czechoslovakia, youth are exhibiting that these powerful tools of communism and the occult to control our minds have done its horrible work. The Word of God says that the wages of sin is death. Thousands, yea, millions are on a gloomy road to eternal death. I beg you, give up these destructive agencies and turn to Jesus. The concept of the gods in spacecraft emerged from the spiritualistic revival of the mid-19th century. John Ballou Newbrough was controlled by spirits in writing a new Bible called Owaspy. It describes the founding of the major world religions by advanced beings coming in spacecraft. Many of the names used in the book sound amazingly similar to those used in the movie Star Wars. It is no accident that from the latter part of the last century, readers of fiction have been bombarded by space novels and comic books. Lucifer has been preparing the world, especially the minds of children, for the masterpiece of his deception in the saucer movement of the 20th century. Sightings, as published in major newspapers at the turn of the century, reflect Lucifer's deceptive principle of keeping the saucer movement just in advance of man's scientific abilities. The spiritualist von Däniken claimed to have seen through astral projection the history and the return of the saucers. Since his books, hundreds have been written presenting the same theme. Today, serious studies have been presented, not only in a scholarly fashion of sightings, but also books for children, presenting it in a factual way.
giving a history of the landing of the saucers, claiming the biblical sightings were saucers. These things have been made vividly real through a constant bombardment of science fiction movies all the way back to the early 50s. Today, it's been serials on television. At the same time these are going on, we see sightings described in newspapers of the landing of saucers in remote areas, the damage of crops, and also terrible mutilation of animals after sightings have been seen by ranchers and farmers. Who could not look on the endless variety of saucer photographs taken with home cameras by people of all walks of life and not be deceived by Lucifer's deceptive plan to convince mankind that advanced beings are visiting us from other planets? One of the most startling documented experiences recorded is that of William Meyer of Hinwell, Switzerland, who on January 28, 1975 made first contact with saucer beings claiming to be from Pleiades. By April 4, 1978, he had 105 meetings with these fallen angels posing as spacemen. Bill took hundreds of photographs of the spaceships. These, along with pages of quotations of the spirits, were published in September 1979. Their communications are curiously harmonious with the teachings of modern witchcraft and the New Age movement, to the point of using the exact words and phrases of those claiming to be illuminated by the advanced beings living in the hollow earth, or those claiming to be illuminated by God's self within. In the 60s, many prominent individuals came to the front claiming to be prophets of the flying saucers, such as Uri Geller. As from a child, he showed these supernatural powers, but the most prominent was that of George King, who claimed to be sent by Jesus Christ to charge mountains around this world. This is Mount Shasta in Northern California. This is George King and followers up on that mountain making contact with spirits, claiming to be contacting the beings from outer space. This map of the United States shows in red blocked areas those areas where most of the sightings take place in the United States. When we look over at California, we can clearly see that Shasta has been the center of a large number of sightings. There's something supernatural taking place in that area. In fact, we know that over 40 cults have gathered around that mountain. Some worship what they call Lemurians. They say live beneath the mountains. But other, like the Findhorn group, stand by the old philosophies of the New Age movement that were envisioned by the theosophical ideas of Alice Bailey. With all this, what appears to be tangible evidence, it's no wonder that thousands and thousands are gathering to worship saucer intelligences and are being taught in classes, how to make contact with these beings from outer space by letting their minds go in the same way that ancient Hinduism taught how to make contact with the God within. Many religious people are now believing, and Christians are now believing, that God was originally an astronaut. It's made its way into the sacred realms of the Christian church. Some are interpreting the idea that maybe Adam and maybe Eve, the first man and woman, were originally brought here by flying saucers. The vision of Ezekiel chapter 1, which is a picture of the throne of God, a vision that was given to Ezekiel, is now depicted as a flying saucer by very prominent individuals. In fact, now the entire Bible is seen as contact with supernatural space intelligences. In the early 60s, Barney and Betty Hill saw a flying saucer. It landed and took them aboard. Under hypnotic trance, the story was brought out of this terrifying ordeal. A movie was made after that and comes out every year. Hundreds of these kind of experiences have been brought out by hypnosis, but others, such as Val Johnson's running into a flying saucer, have tangible, factual evidence involved in them that can't be denied. One of the most terrifying aspects of the saucer experiences is that of seeing beings that are terribly distorted and horrifying to look at. While some see these beings as looking like human beings, others see horrifying creatures, the terror of which burns itself into their minds and into their memories. After seeing a being of this nature, it would be almost impossible to tell these people that they really saw nothing, that satanic agencies were manifesting themselves to these individuals in the form of these horrifying creatures. The world is on the verge of seeing beings come out of flying saucers. The movie Encounters of the Third Kind did more than just present this idea. It glorified this idea. It made people want to make contact with space intelligences. It depicted the government as playing a decisive role in making contact with the space intelligences. In '53, they came in over airspace. This made this an issue of national emergencies. When the jets were sent up, they couldn't even get near them. Since then, the government has established several projects. In Donald Keyhole's book, Flying Saucers Top Secret, he reveals the government's conclusions on the flying saucer mystery. They found that in the Hydrographic Office of the Navy, there is a map called the Perry Reese map that goes back 5,000 years and is so accurate, only one thing could explain it: a worldwide aerial survey. It originally came from a Turkish naval officer in 1953 and made its way to the Navy. They believe that the map indicates that Columbus had a map. The original map went back 5,000 years. And it must have took a tremendous team of men to have made it. And since there was no factories or laboratories that have been found through the years, and no parts of airplanes, they must have come in spaceships. Since that time, the government has gotten behind many projects to bring this information openly before the public. By fascinating films and documentaries, they have tried to make it appear to be an archaeological finding. But the most prominent movies are those who have come out recently, such as Encounters of the Third Kind. On this magazine, it says the UFOs are coming. The UFO depicted in the movie was the size of a city, coming down out of the clouds, making trumpet-like sounds, but over a mountain called Devil's Mountain. Could it be Lucifer's subtle announcement of his own counterfeit of the second coming of Jesus Christ described in the Bible? The movie series Star Wars was crafted to place the ancient magic force of witchcraft into a modern guise.
The Force is what gives the Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together.
In one of the many UFO magazines, an article was written by Robert N. Webster describing the surprise of a reporter in observing the presentation of Star Wars to the President and the White House staff and reps from other countries 6 months before it's released to the public. It was a shock because this is not a White House practice, especially on a children's science fiction movie. According to Webster, the film was crafted to warn us of the dangers of interplanetary enemies. Why did the government release this to the public now? Well, they believe that they must prepare us to mobilize our forces without panic to repel an invasion that's coming from the heavens. What was the reason for the tremendous popularity of this movie? Well, the facts can be made known. These facts may shock us. It's successful because a large part of it they believe is true. You see, for 2 centuries, Johannes Kepler and other famed astronomers tried to solve an interplanetary mystery. They believed there must be a planet between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter. But it wasn't until the late Dr. George H. Williamson devoted his entire life to contactees, the whole story, they believe, was brought out. These people came up with the same set of facts, supernaturally. What was that story about? George H. Williamson describes that all these contactees told of a great interplanetary government that existed in this area of the galaxy for a long period of time. This system was a government that eventually turned its police force over to a huge computer system, except for one planet, a planet by the name of Meldik. Another name given in books and periodicals for Meldik is Lucifer. That might be interesting to you. The planet was experimenting with atomic energy, and eventually this Earth-like planet Meldik blew itself up. The tragic result of it was the great meteor belt that surrounds our solar system between the planets of Jupiter and Mars today. Just before the planet was blown up, these contactees tell us, beings came from other planets and in mercy transferred a group of these to this Earth in its early stages of physical involvement. These individuals, it is believed by the saucer movement today, were the original Adam and Eve, or the beginning of our intelligent life form here on this Earth, the origin of our entire civilization, and that these beings are coming back to bring peace to this Earth at the end of Earth's history. Why are the non-human characters so exciting and interesting in Star Wars? The facts are that these were drawn from the files of thousands of sightings. This article says that Earth indeed faces a great challenge: participation in an interplanetary war against the evil forces from Orion, with the Space Confederation as our ally. Friends, it is Jesus that is coming through Orion, not evil forces. This is obviously part of Lucifer's plan to get the world to reject the coming of Jesus. Another movie preparing men's minds for the coming of the saucers is E.T. or Extraterrestrial. It is a story of a little space being that came down to this earth and was left behind. He made close friends with the little boy and in a time actually took possession of his soul. The movie was hilarious, and the little creature showed many aspects of a little child. He had to learn to talk. Everyone that met him fell in love with him. Eventually he died to save the little boy's life, who was growing sick because of him. The little boy, in tears, watched him raise himself to life. At the end of the film, all of his friends or disciples kissed him goodbye. Just before he ascended in the spacecraft, he put his finger on the Hindu third eye of the little boy and said, "I will be with you here." Another way that young people are being brought into the occult in the saucer movement is through the use of video games. You will have noticed that most video games revolve around fighting off foreign spacecraft that are invading this earth. One of the many movies depicting our need of cooperation with space allies to fight off the evil forces about to invade us is that of The Last Starfighter. In this science fiction fantasy, a space war video game on Earth is in reality a test to determine who would qualify for interplanetary warfare. The young man in the story is kidnapped and taken into outer space to become a great space hero, saving the Earth and the Space Confederation from the enemy. So much of this saucer movement is tangible phenomenon that scientists and leading intellectual thinkers are being dragged kicking and screaming into Lucifer's deception. In '78, UFO Annual brought out the union between Catholicism, the charismatic movement, and the flying saucers. The last 3 decades has not only seen a tremendous revival of the occult and sightings of flying saucers, but also an epidemic of weeping Madonnas and bleeding statues in the Roman Catholic Church. Scientists have found these blood samples to be real blood. Among the miracles of the Protestant charismatic mania that took place in Wales in 1904 and 5 was seeing flying saucers. In 1917 in Fatima, Portugal, several children claimed to have seen Mary. The miracles that took place were seen by 70,000 people. These children said that Mary gave them a prophecy about the end of the world and a warfare between the communist world and the Christian world. Mary told the children to tell the audience that she would do a miracle on October 13, a miracle that was to astound the world and give evidence to these prophecies of a third world war. What was that miracle like, this Roman Catholic miracle done by Mary? Well, the darkened sky suddenly became illuminated. The cloud bank parted to reveal a great shiny silvery disk. Yes, it was a flying saucer. The cult of Mary, the blue army of Roman Catholicism, revolved around the flying saucer movement. In America, years later, when Officer Shermer was taken aboard a flying saucer, he drew a picture of what he saw on the chest of these saucer men. It was a crest, a winged serpent. The only winged serpents ever described in history are those to be found in the Bible, and it is a symbol of Satan or Lucifer. Those that are so determined that the coming of these fiery flying serpents or saucers are going to help us would be shocked by the information that is uncovered in Stan Deo's book, The Cosmic Conspiracy. A former U.S. intelligence agent now living in Australia has brought out the story that in the intelligence operations of the United States there is a close union with saucer intelligences working with high technological research. This is taking place largely in Australia at a place called Pine Gap. What are they studying there? This was discovered by a man named Bruce Cathay in harmonics. In his books on harmonics, he points out that around this world is an electromagnetic grid. The Earth is a great generator, as Nikola Tesla discovered. That they're working with electromagnetic propulsion and are planning a tremendous movement to bring the world into the snare of the New Age. These saucers will come as saviors to the world. Some tremendous force, some tremendous power is going to supposedly bring peace and safety to the earth. This is brought out in the movie 2010 Space Odyssey. Here, Russian and American scientists investigating some very strange phenomenon taking place on Jupiter find there a very large geometric shape that cannot be understood. This geometric shape's activity on the planet's surface causes it to explode. The astronauts escape just in time, and across their computers comes a message. All the worlds are yours, except Europa. Attempt no landing there. Use them together in peace. Use them in peace. One thing that is brought out in the book and not in the movie is that geometric shape that caused the destruction of that planet and instituted peace on Earth was called Lucifer. It is known today in science that the human body is an electromagnetic organism, that everything in our body takes place because of electricity. The ancients believed that a man could harness and control electromagnetic energy by his mind. Many of the sciences today appear to support the occult sciences. But this does not mean that the occult philosophy is true. The same set of observable facts easily support both the philosophy of Christianity or the occult of the philosophy. Choosing to be a Christian, one chooses to submit his mind to the control of God. But in the occult, one chooses to believe that he is a God controlling himself. The occult teaches that we are on the verge of a great new frontier, a frontier in spiritual evolutionary advancement, where every man is a God and will be able to choose and control his own destiny. But what is it really saying? If the Christian philosophy is true, and Lucifer, that great angel who has now become the adversary, or Satan, is here to deceive mankind, that when we submit to self and withhold our mind from the control of the God of the Bible, we then come under Satan's power, thinking that we're controlling ourselves. The world will become like an India, men's minds submitted to a power they claim is within, but in reality the power of darkness. If you want to know what the New Age will be like, look to the degraded system of India. Look to the great empires of the past when a few esoteric priests control the masses, teaching them a superstitious religion while they themselves believed in the esoteric religion. David Spangler, one of the leaders in the new movement, tells about the cosmic evolution. He says, when man enters upon the pathway of self, he enters into a great creative adventure of learning the meaning of divinity by accepting to himself the responsibility of a microcosm unto whom he is the God. There he can say, I have fully and absolutely accepted the responsibility of who and what I am. The being that helps man to reach this point is Lucifer, the angel of man's evolution, the spirit of light in the microcosmic world. In 1976, my wife and I were invited to go to Berkeley to work on a street ministry. We had come from a small Christian community, and the Berkeley atmosphere was quite a surprise to us. We learned a lot of things and had many interesting experiences. One of those experiences was that I made a close friend of a man who did astrology for a living. He came and visited us frequently, and one day he came to me and in private he said that he needed my help, that a power was trying to kill him. Well, I didn't know what he was talking about, but I would be willing to pray with him, so my wife and I and this gentleman went up into my office. And there a strange voice took possession of him and began to speak with us, telling us that we had no power, that we could do nothing to it. And then it began to strangle him, forcing him to the floor. My wife and I dropped to our knees, and when we just mentioned the name of Jesus, it just disappeared. I can even remember today the awesome feeling of the sense of power that a Christian has in just using the name of Jesus. And these powers of the occult world just simply melt away. or disappear. That wasn't the only experience we've had. Since that time, many folks have come to us for help when they've been caught up and oppressed by these powers. And over again, it never ceases to amaze me that the name of Christ holds so much power for the Christian. One gentleman came to me, and after being introduced to him, he told me that he was a high priest in the world of spirit worship. Well, I was always interested in meeting someone like that, so I asked him to come in and sit down. We chatted for a little while, and then he explained to me that he had 109 spirit guides that gave him powers and abilities that helped him to remember and gave him talents. I didn't really know what to do because in the world I came from, we didn't want spirits around. So I asked him if he'd like to be rid of them, and I'd be happy to cast them out for him. In shock, he looked back at me. I remember him getting up and in fear walking out of the place. Why was he so afraid? I'll tell you that there has never been a contest, not even the slightest contest, in the strength between Jesus Christ and Lucifer or Satan. The reason is the power of Jesus is as much stronger than the power of Lucifer as the power of a creator above a creature. What is the struggle, the competition, and the battle all about? The battle is over you, friend, and your heart. Who will you serve? Will you follow Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God, the creator of the world, the author of the Bible? Or will you follow yourself into the great collage of the occult teachings? I know that I haven't even scratched the surface of those occult teachings and the size of this massive movement. There's no book that could ever contain it, let alone a 2-hour videotape. But I hope that I've been able to show you the Christian's perspective on this situation. And also I hope that I've raised a question in your mind about the validity of the New Age teachings or the teachings of the occult and their honesty. The occult teaches that every human being will become a god someday, that all paths lead to that eventual experience. But Christianity teaches that there is only one way to have eternal life, only one way to God, and that's through His Son, Jesus of Nazareth. Any other path, Christianity teaches, will lead to eternal death, eternal nothingness. I know that Jesus wants to invite us home today. He's done everything to try to convince us of how much He loves us. Our only hope is to accept His sacrifice in our behalf, and through His power live a life obedient to all God's commandments in that new world that He's creating for us. Come and investigate Christianity and find the Jesus Christ of that religion. Study the Bible. I urge you today to begin a study of the Word of God, the Bible. Let's bow our heads together, shall we? Dear Father in heaven, I ask that you would bless this videotape. I know, Lord, that it has many flaws in it, but I just pray that folks will look at it and realize the importance today of studying their Bible and being ready for the soon return of Jesus Christ. I pray, Lord, that you'll urge upon the hearts of those who do not know Him yet to begin to search Him out and find Him in your Word and to accept Him as their best friend and Savior. I pray that your Holy Spirit will go with this tape wherever it goes and use it to draw people into your love and prepare them for eternal life. These things I pray in Jesus' holy name. Amen.